I know I'm the first female leader. I don't mind in one sense if the novelty wears off and people would just get on with the job.
The Liberal Party is losing young voters, and fast. And now for the first time, a woman is the Liberal leader and has the job of trying to reboot a party that some young people say doesn't understand them.
This is a moment in time to capture and to treasure.
After more than 2 decades in politics, Susan Lee has been the minister for almost everything. We sat down with her to talk about her mental health in public life, leading a party that has been called out for having a woman problem, and whether the Liberals can reconnect with a generation that's tuning out.
Thank you so much for talking to The Feed today.
It's a pleasure. It's really lovely.
So let's get into it. I'm sure you're aware there is a bit of an internet meme at the moment about Susan, 3 S's. You said it was numerology, then you said it was your punk phase. Can you clear the air for us?
It's my punk phase. It's not numerology. So I feel I've disappointed a lot of young people who quite like the numerology angle, but I'm going to have to disappoint them again and make it very clear that this was part of my rebel teenage punk phase when I wasn't getting on very well with my parents and wanted to annoy them. I annoyed them in more ways than just my name, by the way. So it ended up in there and it's never really left. I am humbled, I am honoured, and I am up for the job.
Is part of you disappointed that becoming the first female leader of the Liberal Party, a historic achievement, also came at this time where the party is facing this massive election loss?
I'm disappointed for our party that we had such a crushing loss and let me tell you how bad it was. We have 2 seats in urban Australia, in the cities. We have record low votes with youth and with women. And historically, the scale of this defeat is unprecedented. So I want to make that point because I accept it. I heard the message. My female leadership does send a signal to women that you can be a woman and lead the Liberal Party.
Are you disappointed that it didn't come sooner or at another time where it really could have shone through a bit more?
I'm grateful, honoured and privileged, and I mean that hand on heart, that I have been given this incredible opportunity to lead the party that I've been part of for more than half my adult life.
So former Deputy Liberal leader Julie Bishop talked about the toxic misogyny that she experienced in Canberra.
A culture develops whereby those who are prone to inappropriate or unprofessional or even illegal behaviour get a sense of protection. They know that people aren't going to complain because that will damage the party.
In 2020, Malcolm Turnbull said that there were some people in the Liberal Party who would never back a female leader. What's your experience like with misogyny from within your party?
Well, the party has backed a female leader, and overwhelmingly, wherever I go, people are receiving my leadership very positively. There have been times in that building where women have not been treated well, women have not been treated appropriately, and women have been let down. But I don't confine my remarks about workplaces and misogyny, or however you want to describe it, to just the parliament. Because I've worked in shearing sheds, I've worked in aviation, which was a very male-dominated industry, and I found a lot of challenges in my workplace in those days. I think we've got to be careful about confining our thoughts on this to just the parliament in Canberra, where in many respects we have a privileged workplace.
A number of Liberal women have left Parliament and have said that it's something that they faced. Is it something that you've personally faced in Parliament?
From time to time, and I don't say that it was something that was egregious or crossed a line. It was simply perhaps that feeling that you weren't being taken seriously in a room full of men. And I know a lot of women have felt that and experienced that. Or that feeling that if you said something in a room full of men, nobody really appeared to pay much attention. But then when a man said it, suddenly everybody listened and thought it was a really good initiative. And our culture within our party is much better than it might have been all those years ago.
So young Australians are more open than ever about their mental health. I wondered what you do to look after yours.
I think it's important to walk, and that's quite a simple response, I know, but for me that works well. So I don't want to really make it a conversation so much about me, except to say that whenever I talk about me, I'm thinking of people who perhaps haven't had the fortune that I have to be in the role that I have and the access to support. But look, it's a very intense world that we live in as politicians, and we talk to each other about sometimes how that can feel, particularly when you get smashed on social media or you open your emails and you just see 50 that are effectively shouting at you. And my mother used to say, what other people think of you is none of your business. You choose what you think about and that you can move on and think about other things. You know, I've got techniques to sort of keep it at bay. But look, another thing I do is recently I went back to vinyl, part of the vinyl revival. So if I'm walking around your suburbs anywhere and I see a vinyl, you know, the old record shop, I'm in there. I'm sort of searching through the post-punk bins and I'm buying a few things for my collection.
I just sank into this terrible pit of depression. I had suicidal thoughts.
On this topic, Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull both publicly spoke about the toll that politics and leading a party took on them and how they sought help after they left the top job. Do you think politicians should be speaking about their mental health more openly while they're still in the role?
Look, I think that they probably reflected on the experience when they left, and they may not have realised while they were there what the effect was. So sometimes there's some sort of, you know, there's a delayed effect. So I think when you can talk about it, you should. And I certainly wouldn't shy away from it if I needed to. Yeah, you have to be tough in this job.
Do you think it is harder being the first female leader?
I know I'm the first female leader. I don't sort of think of myself like that other than to know that it sends a positive signal to women. I don't mind in one sense if the novelty wears off and people would just get on with the job.
Young people rejected the party, obviously, the last two elections, but particularly in the last election. What do you think they were saying no to?
I don't know that they found us relevant at all. I don't know that they necessarily disliked what we were saying, but we didn't feature in their consideration of what mattered to them. Did we sort of send our message to them in the right way? Maybe, maybe not. Did we have policy offerings that resonated with them? Probably not. Did they look at us and see reflected back the agenda that they wanted? Probably not. So, I think it was a fail on many levels.
Did you at all suspect that at the time that you were making these mistakes?
I certainly gained a feeling during the last few weeks of the campaign, which was when I was standing at polling booths across the country while people came in to vote. And often, you know, there was a queue, so you had a chance to talk to people in that queue. And it was quite interesting. A lot of the couples, the man was taking the Liberal Party how to vote card, but the woman was sort of just basically ignoring us. And, you know, I asked after a while, you know, what give me your honest feedback. Because if you ask someone for their honest feedback, particularly a woman, usually you get it. That's a good thing. And, you know, they would say, well, yeah, no, we're not really, you know, we're not interested in the Liberal Party. Some would say we were Liberal Party supporters, but we're no longer.
Millennials and Gen Z are now the biggest voting group. We saw from analysis of the 2022 federal election that millennials did not vote more conservatively, bucking this age-old trend that you become more conservative as you age. Do you think you can win back their votes in one term?
Definitely can. We can change the trajectory in one term, and we have to, and we must, and we will do that by listening and by learning what exactly young people, older people, whatever generation was telling us, and responding as we should and as we need to. Now, our policies are up for review, but our values are not.
No! Don't dig it! Leave it in the ground, it's time to get with
In
it!
2022, when you were the Environment Minister, a group of teenagers took you to court.
The landmark claim by a group of 8 teenagers argues that the expansion of Whitehaven's Vickery coal mine will contribute to climate change, and that Australia's Environment Minister has a duty of care to them as young people.
You won that case. How do young people who feel strongly about climate vote for you when they remember you for that case?
I want to say that I do understand that young people want to see greater action on climate change. And I've heard that message from many, so I accept that. With respect to that case, without going into the details of the case, as with most of the decisions that I made as Environment Minister, it was a balancing act. With a lot of the actions that I took to protect the environment, you know, there were people in the business community, the mining and resources community, who actually wanted me to go further. But I do look back on my time as Environment Minister with pride. I would respectfully say to young people that they consider that balance that you always have to undertake in these positions.
In 2011, when you were supporting Palestinian statehood, you said,
After 2 generations of strife and war, are we going to admit to our children that their parents could not even find a path to peace?
The hideous events
of October the 7th in Gaza have changed my thinking on the entire subject. Having said that, I remain a steadfast friend of the Palestinian people.
Do you still believe in a two-state solution?
Yes, and an enduring peace is more important than ever, and we want the bloodshed to cease. People often remark on my comments from those days. It was certainly a game changer on October the 7th, 2023, with the murderous actions of Hamas in southern Israel. So I will always say that the friendship I have towards both the Palestinians and the Jewish people remains just the same as it was then now.
Reflecting on the Liberal Party and how they have acted across the scope of this war, do you think they have done enough? What would you tell your kids now?
We as a Liberal Party have stood up very strongly in favour of social cohesion for our Jewish Australians on the streets, and we've stood strongly against terrorism, the terrorism that has been enshrined by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And the consequences of all of that activity and those terrorist events overseas have had consequences in Australia.
The Liberal Party in the last election campaign was accused of alienating immigrants and multicultural communities. Why do you think people felt this way?
I want to know why they felt that way, because I've certainly, as the Deputy Leader in the last Parliament, never ever felt that way. And I feel sad if I hear from someone who says we don't feel valued and we don't feel welcomed. But I accept that maybe that was the case for a variety of reasons, and I want to understand that more. I'm a migrant to this country, but I've got the great fortune of, looking, white with the same language. And I know that for someone who doesn't have that but comes to this country learning a new language, I felt very different and excluded at school. But I know I have a sense actually of what that feeling is, and it's not good enough for people to feel like that. I worry about social cohesion.
Thank you so much for your time.
That's a pleasure.